Welcome to a very special episode of Anatomy of a Movie. We're going to be talking about Black and Blue. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Anatomy of a Movie. I am Scott Menzel, happy to be hosting this week's episode. But first and foremost, before we talk about the movie, which is going to be Black and Blue, we have two very, very special guests in the studio who are connected to this film in some way, shape, or form, right?
In all ways.
In all ways,
that's exactly right.
Sitting right next to me is Deon Taylor, and right next to him is his lovely wife, Roxanne Taylor. Thank you so much for being on the show and joining me, as always, on this show, which is usually, he's in the hot sheet. It is Dimitri Panos.
Hi, hello, everybody. Popcorn talk. I'm just going to keep doing that. Popcorn talk.
Pop. So me and Dimitri are going to bounce back and forth. I'm actually going to pass it right over to Dimitri because he's actually the first person to usually do this show, and who's best at it. He's been doing this for what, 7 years? You've been on this show?
100 years now.
Yeah, 100 years.
A million episodes under my belt. No, actually, it's 6. It's over, going into 7.
Wow.
Since the inception of the show. Very first one was the original Pacific Rim, was the very first of this incarnation of Anatomy of a Movie. So I've been privileged, and it's an honor to sit in this seat, and it's an honor to have you folks here. Always love talking movies. That's the whole genesis of Anatomy of a Movie. So I've got so much to talk about, and I do want to talk about Black and Blue.
Yes.
And I want to talk, and your inspirations for getting in here, but we were talking outside before coming in. Mm-hmm. Something that struck me in my research. You went from playing basketball in like Germany, to being inspired by DVD special feature documentaries on movies like Terminator 2, which was a great talk, into filmmaking. And I want to talk about that because that's what brought you into filmmaking. You're a self-educated, made writer and filmmaker.
That's right.
I want to talk about this.
And dancer.
And dancer.
I actually can dance really well. You know what? It's interesting, man, because we had this conversation a lot about, what is film school and what does film school mean to people and what do you learn? And, obviously when a lot of these young kids get out of film school, what did they learn? It's interesting for me based on the fact that I never went to film school. And I've also began to look around and notice that a lot of the filmmakers that I absolutely love have never went to film school. Mm-hmm. I was surprised years ago to find out Quentin Tarantino never went to film school. He was someone who just absolutely loved movies and cinema and film and could study it and watch it, and that's exactly what happened with me. As a matter of fact, it's a very special day today because normally I tell this story and I say, every time I tell this story, I was in Germany playing basketball and my girlfriend at the time was sending me DVDs. Well, that girlfriend is right next to me. And is now my wife, right? And it's just, it's incredible. Yeah, so I was, getting the care packages or getting things sent. And movies began to be the highlight of my day because after you play basketball 3, 4, 5 hours during the day and you go home, you don't speak the language, it's the middle of winter time in Germany, it's like, all right, what are you going to do now? And then you turn the TV on, it's like, I'm not watching any of this shit, right? so at that point, it's like, all right, what are we going to do? And obviously you put in the DVD at the time, watch whatever that movie is, and I was fascinated, man. I never even thought about it, but click the link and there it is, like a making of or, a commentary. And I began to be just fascinated with, first, the commentary. I thought that was interesting. I had never clicked on that. And to be able to watch a film and have the director walk you through, talking over the film, blow by blow, what happened in the movie. Fun, educational, You know what I mean? Ups, downs. Oh my God, he didn't say this line. Like we cut away from it, and then you're going like, wow, this is insane. So then if you go from the commentary to actually watching, which we just had a conversation about, which is like really good produced making of. I mean, you know, an hour, right?
Plus,
right, or more, where you're sitting there watching deleted scenes. Real, how did they make that? Where's that at? What's a fly wall? What is not a fly wall? What camera did they use? What actor was on point that day? Someone came late and, oh, he was actually sick this day, and that's why the performance. When you start seeing that, you're like, damn, this is insane.
Right.
And I got the bug, man, and I actually flew back at the time and was in between trying to figure out if I was going to play basketball. I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. I just knew I was really interested in film. And I had wrote this script, and I was sleeping on Roxanne's couch. And I remember going, I got this movie. I got this idea for this horror.
He wasn't really sleeping on the couch.
I was like, I got this. You cannot tell these people. No, okay, so, but having this, like I had wrote the whole screenplay to a horror movie on a Me tablet, similar to that tablet over there.
Yeah.
And I wrote it out like a book.
Right.
And I had a friend at the time who, his name was Rodney, and he was like a film dude, not really at all. He was like in the military, he knew how to work the camera, so he was like, man, I'm a movie maker. And I'm like, all right, well, how do you write a script, right? He didn't know shit. So I was like, all right. So I had to figure out how to actually write a screenplay. And it was really interesting, man, like the way that the universe actually synced up for me to actually become a filmmaker. At the time, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to get this movie done. I ended up meeting this guy, and you'll love this. His name was Brian Hooks. And Brian Hooks at the time, not the director Brian Hooks. This is an actor Brian Hooks. And he was making, at the time, these very small, independent, straight to DVD movies that were so raw and uncut. They were movies literally that were like $10,000.
Wow.
Right? $15,000. And I was like, man, well, and he was here in LA and I was in Northern California, and he was like, man, you should just come to set and I'll show you what we're doing. And I remember going to set and being like, this is the movie set? Like, and it was like the director, him and the director were the writers, directors, producers, they were the wardrobe, they were, you know what I mean? They were behind the scenes. It was like, they did everything. And I remember being on set with them one day and I'm like, man, this is insane. All the stuff that they're doing to make a movie happen. Video cameras, whatever it might be. And I remember being in film school during that time with him. But I'm like, damn, this is crazy. Somebody bringing some KFC to the set. The director like passing out the chicken and shooting. I'm like, damn, this is crazy. And as I watched that process, when they finished this process with this film, and I seen it on obviously a link, I watched it a little bit on the screen, I said, well, you could actually see all the flaws. And I, in my brain, was thinking, oh, that movie's gonna look just like the movie that goes to the theater. And that's when I learned, like, okay, this is how you make a movie independently, but why does it look like that, right? And then that's when I started learning, like, oh, you need a cinematographer. Lighting is what makes it feel like this. Oh, acting is why it looks, that's why you gotta have a great actor. Oh, a director's job is to get the performance. So all of a sudden now my brain kind of, and still wired for basketball, I'm beginning to look at film like a team. And it really comes down to who are you putting on the court, right? Like who's on the court, right? If you got a bunch of guys that are not really good, then you're not gonna have a really good movie, right? And if you have a bunch of guys that are actually really good and you have a really good coach, now you got a team that's going to play. And I looked at film that way from day one. Like, oh, you got to get a cinematographer. You got to get the right actors. You got to, you know what I mean? You got to understand what they're saying on the script. And that's how it happened. And eventually, 2-3 years after that, after walking the streets for, I mean, literally, man, like 4 years, like trying to figure out if somebody could help us make this screenplay that I had wrote in Germany. Literally. Like, please, please, please. Someone came to me and said, hey, man, they're not going to ever make that movie. I had went to all the studios. People knocked on doors and, got laughed out of the goddamn room a bunch of times. And finally a dude said, man, you got to go make your movie by yourself. And that conversation put me on a completely different trajectory for my entire life because I didn't even know you could do that. Right? I didn't even know that was part of the game where you could be like, wait, I don't need them? And then it's like, no, you could actually go get your own money and make your own film. And 15 years later, here me and Roxanne are. Roxanne, the first time we stepped on the movie set, it was our film. It was written, produced, and directed by us. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And the cinematographer at the time, his name was Phil Lee, incredible Japanese cinematographer. I remember he was like, you just tell the actors what to do and I'll do the camera and I'll tell you the rest. And we're sitting there and it's day one, I'm shaking like a leaf, right? We done did all this stuff. I didn't hustle my way to the movie set, right? So now I'm the director and I'm standing there and I remember it was like a scene with the, it's a horror movie, and it was the aftermath of like this killer that went into this house and killed these people and all the police were coming and Rutger Hauer was the cop. Rutger Hauer was the detective. We got him for like 2 days for $15,000, and we were like treating this dude like he was Barack Obama and said like, Mr. Howard, could you please, or do you need a seat? Like and it was like 3, 2, 1. It was the first day, 7 o'clock in the morning, and 3, 2, 1, Deon, boom, and everyone's standing there, and I'm standing there behind the camera, and I'm going, boy, this is no lie, and I'm going. And literally, and everyone's like looking, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, what the fuck are they looking at me for? And I'm like looking. Literally, this happened for about 3 minutes. And I was going like, damn, is something wrong? And you can't tell anyone you don't know what the hell you're doing because you're the director.
Right.
And the Phil Lee leaned over off the camera, walked over and said, Deon, you gotta say action. And I went, oh. So then I went to wait another minute like I was making this shit, like I was doing it on purpose. I was like, action. And all this shit started happening. I said, oh my God, this is... Then, of course, I don't know when to cut. Right? So now you're like, now they like keep doing this shit over and over. And I'm like, damn, this has been going on for 7 minutes. You gotta say cut. I'm like, cut. Right? And this is like 35 millimeter film at the time, so you know the film.
Oh my God.
That's cheap. Oh, man,
no,
I'm kidding.
Right.
So that was like how it all came down, man. And you know, it was crazy. And I remember like Roxanne, like day 3, like, Deon, you gotta learn how to say cut. We can't afford any more film. And I'm like, oh, I got, because I'll just let the film roll. And man, you don't understand, like for all those filmmakers out there right now, when you shooting film, every second is money. Every reel is money. Every frame is money.
Yeah.
So it's like, you run through the, you know, now you're talking about like, man, can we get a little bit more money? And yeah, it was interesting, man. And that was the first time we got from Germany to a movie set.
That's so, Roxanne. So basically, this is all your fault.
It is, yeah.
You were the film curator,
Right.
I was going to ask you, like, what was your take on this whole like passion? Were you on board with it from day one, or is it something that he had to kind of like?
I mean, I 100% support him in everything he did. No, I had no idea he was going to be, you know, who he is today, right? Or that this would be. I mean, he worked his whole life to play basketball, right? His whole entire life, he ate, slept, breathed basketball, right? So I didn't envision another life outside of that because of who he was. So when he did come and say, oh, I want to make a movie, of course I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. I mean, you know, I'm
How hard can it be?
like, whatever. You know, obviously, you know, I've known Deon 27 years now, so it's like, you know, we're very passionate people, and, you know, you got to go do and go get what you want on your own. And so I'm like, all right, well, what do we got to do? And I only knew this much. He always refers to like, well, I was in the film business, and I didn't know shit either.
She was in the film business at the time. Did I tell you guys that? Let me tell you what business she was in.
Go ahead.
Because that was part of my whole makeup with her. When we would talk to people, I was like, yeah, Roxanne's in the film business, so we're gonna like use some of her. And they'd be like, what do you do? And she worked at the GGA at the time. It was a PA in the Texas Walkers.
But I had some like exposure.
You know?
And
I wanted to talk to you about working at the DGA, but you brought up a point. I'm going to get to that just one sec. you brought up a point about it being a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Which totally is. And the other thing, too, that you hear many a director say, I am only as good as the people around me. I try to hire people who know what they're doing to help me, and we can collaborate on. And one of my favorite stories about this is similar to yours, is Harold Ramis. The very first movie he directed was Caddyshack. And he said, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And we were at this golf course. I put my camera down, and I was about to say action, and then the DP comes over to me and says, oh, you really can't put the camera there because the sun's going to come down. It's going to ruin the shot. He goes, okay. He goes, I suggest you move it over here.
Right.
He goes, okay. And he goes, that's how I learned how to direct.
Yeah.
So, for many, it has been a trial by fire, but I find that the best movies are that collaborative effort.
Yes.
Where everybody's gears are spinning.
Yes.
And they're all in tune. So, yeah, and I always love talking about that because people don't understand that.
Your story, in a weird way, have you seen the Dolomite movie, the one that came out with Eddie Murphy?
I haven't, but I know the Dolomite story from beginning to end. Yes.
So, but I mean, it's funny. Your story sounds very similar to that movie being made.
Very similar,
Where it's just like no one really knew what they wanted to do. They just were very passionate about it, and everyone just kind of came on board.
But his people, like your DP, like you said, knew like. You got a real action, and I'll take care of the camera. Because you make sure of this. So that's I love those kind of stories. So the DGA.
I think it's important too, though, to know what you know and you know what you don't know, right? And not being afraid to admit that, right? And relying on the team around you to fill in. On the things you don't know. And we've been huge supporters of our sets and staff to help us and educate us, because we're students all the time, right? From the beginning to even right now. So they're the ones that helped us and guided us through this whole process.
And I think that you should always approach almost anything with eyes wide open. Like, I can know so much, but if somebody has an idea, you take the suggestion, and that's what makes it truly collaborative. There was a movie that we had reviewed. I'm not going to mention the movie, the director, or anything, but it had a big star in it, and the star, who's an accomplished director, and the director says to this person before filming, listen, dude, I don't want there to be any, I'm the director, you're the actor.
I already made a bad movie.
And I'm like going,
you already made a bad movie.
Why would you even bother? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would your ego get in the way of, if he had a suggestion, and the person's professional enough to know he's but if he sees something and said, hey, what if we try this? Why wouldn't you be open to the suggestion?
Trying it.
You're just trying. And especially now that it's not on 35 millimeter, where it's digital, where you can delete. That just blew me away. I was like, that's the height of hubris that you have. And you really, I get as a director too, you have to be in command.
Yes.
But at the same time, open to, you have to be, in a sense, Captain Kirk, but you take your suggestions from your crew to say, hey, and then you suss out, okay, I like this, that one not so much, but you're parsing out the best that your crew has to offer so that you can get the best out of an actor, the best out of a scene, the lighting. So you'd be surprised how many people do not approach film that way.
And why I would believe that the most successful filmmakers in the business right now, and I'm not talking about critical acclaim. I'm talking about people that make movies for audiences and fans. Why they're successful is because of what you just said. They step into a room, and it's a creative exercise where everyone's involved from beginning to end. You know what I mean? We have people, and I didn't realize what we were doing. And like I said, as a filmmaker, I approach film like basketball, and really looking at, when I played ball, what coach did I love and what coach did I hate? Okay? You could get a coach like a Bobby Knight, right? Who's throwing chairs at you, screaming at you, grabbing you by the back of your neck, pulling you out the game, right? You can't have your name on the back of your jersey, right? This is Indiana basketball, right? Where you're like, okay, so many people done left that program in a scar for life. And you get on the court, and now I'm scared when I get on the fast break. If I miss, the coach gonna yank me out. Or you get a great coach like Shaka Smart, right? Who is diving on the ground during the game and screaming, "Come on, you got him! Lock him up! You missed a shot. Don't worry about it. Get the next one." You know what I mean? He's dripping sweat halftime. That's a guy where you're like, I'm gonna die for this dude on the court.
You need to inspire.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die for this dude on the court. I'm gonna give him everything I have. They're gonna have to drag me off. And we approach film that way. I approach film where every actor come in, everybody, the guy holding the light, I'm saying to him after a take, "What did you think?" "Oh man, you know what I thought? I thought that the one time he went that, the second one, man," I said, "I thought the same thing." You know what I mean? Then what happens is when you're in the fourth quarter, you don't have a lot of money, and you're going into a 16, 17-hour day. That dude that's holding the light, he's still holding it just as heavy as he could hold it. He's coming to you like, "Yo, the second take, D, the second take." That's what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want craft service to be like, I came on set and seen the one thing, man, Deon, I really thought Naomi was great. Right? Like, you want people to have those conversations because this is what they're doing with their life. They're working on a movie. Yeah. So you can't be like, "No, you just craft services. You just the lighting person. I'm the king. Everybody does what I want to do." No. You know how many times I had Naomi Atarian, it's been written, Hilary Swank and Naomi Harris will tell you the same exact thing. When I'm done with a scene, I say, go watch. Go watch it. Which one did you like? Which take did you like? "Deon, I really like number 1. I was like, "Well, I like 2. Why'd you like?" "Well, let's do 3. Let's go do another one." Right? Because all of a sudden now, I need you to be part of what we're doing. I need you to be part of the process. What did you see here differently? What didn't you see there differently? You know what I mean? And that to me is the level of beginning to make great film.
And if I may ask too, I would have, and again, not being in Naomi's head, lucky for her, that it's appreciated.
Yeah.
It's appreciated that Maria.
Well, she had never done that.
Yeah.
She had never
set the tone too. You know what I mean for the entire stage, right? From day one.
Yeah, she had never ever had a filmmaker ask her what did she think.
Yeah.
Right. And what's interesting, you're talking about now, who's she working with? These are incredible. Barry Jenkins. I mean, what's she? 28 Weeks Later. Bond. I mean, Bond movies.
Yeah.
Not one time has a director said, "Hey, what'd you think?" Like, I'm like, "Oh no, that ain't how we don't do it here. We don't do that." You know what I mean? And that's why I feel like when you have movies like Black and Blue today, that has an A+ cinema score, right? And you have critics like A.O. Scott who said this is incredible, right? But fans, man, you're making movies for fans. You're making movies for people that taking their last $20, giving it to a theater chain and sitting down and want to be entertained.
Right.
And they're not going home and writing a book about what they thought about the film. They're saying, man, for 2 hours, damn, that was great. You know what I mean? And that was explosive, and that was great. And that's who I make movies for.
I think, and I think what's interesting about you is that every single I've interviewed you 3 or 4 times at this point.
Yes.
And I've talked to the talent along with you every time. And one of the things that every single talent that I have talked to have said about you, they have said, we love Deon because of his energy and the fact that he actually asks us what we think of the scene.
Yes.
Every person has said that. So kudos to you for doing that because you have built relationships.
That's right.
And I think that's so great and it's so important in this industry.
I would take it a step further too, that it might even inspire some of these people. Because
100%.
listen, I think anytime you're on a set, and I've been on a set, I've been privileged to work like on movies and everything. So, but you learn too, and many people who either act, maybe even produce, if they want to get into directing, the only way to do that is to be led into the process.
Yeah.
So yes, you can see it and how it all is done and takes place, but with you, if you're asking, "Hey, come on over, I want you to take a look at this," they get a better sense of the filmmaking process.
Well, everything.
And and I think that by doing so, you might be inspiring somebody else, maybe later on down the line. Maybe they end up directing an indie film or a television
that is happening.
Or something.
Yeah, and you got to also remember, like, while we're sitting there talking about film, like, we are 100% independent filmmakers. So we're not, as we're talking, on Popcorn Talk today, Popcorn Talk, as we're doing Popcorn Talk, the thing is, you have to remember, we're making movies for $2 and $3 million, $4 million, right? So why I'm saying that is because this is not studio movies where you're like, oh yeah, we got $35 million and hey, we're getting off in 2 hours and let's see if we could cruise by and get one more scene. Like, no, this is like, man, if you don't get it today, you're not getting it. So you need everybody in the room to have the same energy and the same passion. Like, yo, we literally have to do, and because we're talking about the anatomy of film, we literally have to average 50 to 75 setups a day. I literally have to do 5 to 9 to 10 pages a day of dialogue.
Wow.
Right?
That's
and I got to capture performances, capture shots, make sure the cinematographer is getting what he wants to get, and also be obedient to people like Dante Spinotti, who's used to having a day to light a scene, right? People like Daniel Pearl, who's the hottest horror film cinematographer in the world, giving him time to look at the sun and be like, the only way I light a scene is if the sun is over there, right? And I'm going like, okay, God damn it, you know what I mean? Like, okay, man, look, you start setting that up and I'm gonna go shoot. You got to be able to be that type of person. If the moment that you do that, everything that you do independent film-wise breaks. You know what I mean? And you got to have a goddamn good producer, man. You know, this, although she's fine and she's hot and she should be a model and all that stuff, she is incredible. You have no idea the flexibility and the freedom that I have because I have such a great producing partner. And everybody out there watching the show, make sure you get somebody that can really produce, really pay attention to the bottom line, really pay attention to what you need to do. She is the only person, because I am a very creative person. I don't give a shit if I'm set. I'm like flying around like, oh man, that's really good. We should. And she's like, you got 30 minutes, motherfucker, like to get your ass right. And I'm like, all right, well let me try to. And it's great because she's constantly like, you got to be here, you got to be there, you got to do that. Okay, Deon, I know you know how to scratch I could omit a whole 2-3 pages and redo it a different way.
Yeah.
That's part of being independent for so long, where you go, damn, okay, we can't do none of that. All right, give me 20 minutes.
Right.
Right? So now we can't shoot the scene in the field, right? Because we can't get out there and move the equipment. So now I'm going like, okay, we got to do that whole scene on a patio, right? And she's the producer that's going, okay, that's how you're going to do it? Yes. Okay, boom, within 3 minutes, everyone's moving.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And she's already instructed them, this is what we're doing and how we're going to do it, and that's a great producer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what you need in film and independent film. You
Going
know?
off that, I need to ask Roxanne.
Yes.
Okay, so you need to walk me through, because I want to hear more from you.
Sure.
So I want to know what it was like to start off from ground zero, to have absolutely nothing and build up, and then make your way to a fact that you guys had a partnership with Screen Gems.
Yes.
So I want to know about that evolution for you, what that was like, and
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning to now, leading up to Black and Blue.
And you got 20 seconds, go.
You got 20 seconds, go. Do it.
It's been a lot of, trials and tribulations, obviously, being self-taught as well. Little bit different story. I did have, like I was saying earlier, a little bit of some exposure to film, but I was a computer science major.
Okay.
Installing hardware and software for the Senate and Assembly, and decided I want to be in the film business.
Right.
Always was fascinated by it, but could never be on camera, be in front. I freeze up, can't do any of that type of work. I'm
You're doing
just
well
a
now.
complete
Yeah, you're doing great.
mess.
You're doing pretty good. Keep going.
And anyway, my father and my brother, I was like, I'm going to move to Hollywood and figure it out. At that time, temp agencies were huge. So I took my car, my U-Haul, and drove to Hollywood, stayed in a Motel 6, got a temp job at this all-star temp agency as a receptionist. So took 10 steps back to try to learn the business. Fortunately, because of my business background, I was able to get a PA job, which is doing whatever's required at the Walker, Texas Ranger show.
Nice.
And they pretty much kind of taught me how it all works. That's where I kind of learned, okay, this is how you apply for jobs. This is where you go. Because, they're not in the newspaper. They're not online. And online was not even you see, I just tuned him out. I don't even skip a beat with him.
Yeah.
He's a complete all the time.
It's just like I'm trained every time I hear popcorn talk, I do the popping stuff.
You guys just keep talking.
I do. I was just telling them.
She didn't get to talk.
They're not sure. They're not sure how, if they should stop.
No,
or I'm like,
no.
just tune him out.
Yeah, I just let you
tune him
talk.
out.
We know who Who holds the reins?
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, from there, I learned just the mechanism and how to maneuver, and I started interviewing as much as I can. One of them was the DGA.
Okay.
With a gentleman named Marcel Giacusa. He was the national executive in charge of theater awards and administration management for the New York and LA office. And he interviewed me, and I got the job in the interview. And he was like, well, you don't have any movie, business or movies experience, but you have the business. I'll give you $50,000 a year. I'm like, okay. I'm like 20 years old.
That's great. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's where I really learned about movie making. All the awards for television I was involved in. My first production was the Alfred Hitchcock exhibit.
Oh, nice.
So just the layers of how movie making and productions, if you will, work, they're all the same. I feel like whether it's live TV, podcast, you still have all the same elements. And so that's kind of how I learned. Unfortunately, he decided to change his career. And pull me out, but it was
So
an
now it's your
interesting,
fault.
it was an interesting dynamic because I didn't know anything about Hollywood. I didn't even know what the DGA was, right? I didn't know what I was sitting on. I quit. I was like, this is too much. The things that go on, the sexism, the racism, all those elements was too much for me, and I was like, I'm not doing this. Go do that, and I quit. And just right after that is when he was like, I want to make this movie. And so I'm like, all right, let's go make a movie.
Okay.
So that was kind of my quick snapshot Hollywood story. And it's funny because 360, it comes back 360. Last week, I walk into the DGA for the first time in 25 years.
Wow.
To go to an event, a reception there. And I'm like sitting there. I asked the security guard, hey, does Marcel Giacusa still work here? He was like, yeah, he's retiring in 2 years.
Wow.
So he's still in that same
A 2-year
position.
retirement plan.
Doing, right? He started parking cars, though,
Yeah.
Wow.
when he was there.
For the DGA?
For the DGA.
Wow.
So anyway,
That's insane.
Of course, we didn't plan, any of this. The first movie, as he explained, 75, I think we both kind of fell in love with the process. And we just tried to leverage every movie to get to to make the next movie because of the conversation and what was going on and the people around us. And, we sat there and we looked up and here we are, 10 movies in. But, I'm telling you, the road was very, very hard. I've quit, I've cried, I've, yelled, we've argued, we've had no money, counting change, trying to figure it out. Nobody wants to help you.
No.
Nobody gives you any advice. No one, it's just, you're out there winging it, And I don't know how we managed to keep going, but I feel like it's each other, supporting each other. When I was down and ready to give up, he was there and vice versa, because being creative is a whole nother world than my world, you know what I mean? And trying to keep him in line and on track once we get these things going is very hard to do when you're managing, 50 to 150 person crew, right, for $2 million with 20 days to shoot, 16, 17-hour days, and not going over budget, but really trying to support your director on what he needs to get on that screen.
Yeah.
Cannot go back and reshoot, right? So that process, I felt like we figured out, we got through that. But then you had the whole distribution model process.
Yeah.
So we're like,
Which is
yeah, we
another
got
animal.
this, we got this, we done.
I've worked in distribution for many a year.
And then we couldn't put the movie out. We're like, okay, well, how do we get the movie out? Oh, P&A? What's P&A?
Yeah.
Screens?
It's a whole nother world.
That's a whole nother,
It's so funny that you say it. You're right, because I've worked for Universal, Lionsgate, and I worked in distribution. And when I worked on my first movie on set, people were talking about, oh, the trailer's going to be up in this movie. I go, yeah, it's really not that easy. It's not like, and no, I find that, although I think it's changing, but not so long ago, they didn't understand the machinations of distribution,
Right.
and getting screens and how that's done, and the deals being made, and how sometimes it can be a pain in the ass. In trying to get, because there are opinions flying about and all this. So I think it's becoming a little bit more so where the producers and the directors are having a better sense. I know at my time at Lionsgate, I did deal with a lot of producers and or a director to say, hey, your trailer's doing this, and just walking them through the process.
Yeah.
And I think today, because everything sort of has to be symbiotic, that there's a little bit more education, but yet I know the distribution process still kind of remains the same. It's something that it really hasn't changed in forever.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think the distribution of it all became our Achilles heel. That is what completely stopped us at one point in our lives, because we were like, okay, what's happening?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I thought you made a film, you took the movie to these people, and if it's good, they put it out.
right. No.
Then you realize, okay, wait, all right, so now you've went to film school independently, right? And now you go, oh, now I have to learn the film business. And that's where I feel like a lot of minorities, like myself, Roxanne, women, people of color, we come into this business not understanding that side of it. Now you have to learn, okay, what does it mean? What does P&A mean? Oh, that means prints and advertising. That means that these people are going to put this much money behind your movie to actually market it to the general public so that they could actually go buy a ticket and see it.
And but it also means too, the other important key is prints.
Right.
It's striking prints.
That's
and back in the day, like when there was film involved,
That's right.
like it was how many prints and then how long your film was going to
That's
be
right.
to know how many reels
That's right.
they'd have to put into the cans, because I also work with Technicolor, which
Yep.
we did that. Now I call it hard drives in advertising,
Yep.
because now it's making the hard drive, and then what quality is the hard drive? Then it's securing the hard drive, coding it, and then sending that off to theaters and
All of that.
trailer package and
Yeah, I mean, and that's only the traditional
Yes.
studio
Yeah.
model. You know,
Correct.
we started with, you know, the E1s and the Well-Go's and the screen medias of it all, to where you go out on a limited theatrical release, right?
2 to 3 theaters.
There's
Yep.
no prints and advertising
Nope.
to support the movie for the longevity of the movie. So it's up to you. Just because you have your movie in the theater, whether it's 1 screen or 2,000 screens, doesn't mean you have the money to support it. You have to have
Right.
X amount of dollars to support that, right?
Yes.
So then we're like, oh, we got this release.
right.
Well, there ain't one poster.
Right, release your ass.
One radio, you know what I
Release
mean?
your
We're
ass.
like, oh my God, wait. Like, you just don't think about these things, and
Yeah.
you're not educated or privy to this information. You know, we weren't. So here's another whole process of learning,
Yeah.
right?
And if I'm correct, like then you're what they call bicycling prints from theater A to theater B to open it up. So it's coming out this
that's-
weekend, going to another weekend. It's almost like roadshow.
Or you're not getting that at all.
Right.
You know, so or you're not getting the release at all.
How many
or,
people make movies and it never comes
or you're
even
not
out?
finding
Wow,
the
yeah.
distribution
I mean-
at all. So that is the hell of the business, right? Where you go like, damn, well, we put this money in this thing and we couldn't get it out. That's what that means. Or we can't finish our film, not even to get to that step. And we went through those times. We went through those hard periods of time where we figured out how to make a movie, and then we were like, okay, well, this is going to be a 3-year process trying to figure out. That first movie that I made, we made together, the 75 film, it took me 3 years to find distribution for that movie. Right? And I will say this, if I go back and think about it, there was a time early on in the process where we actually had the perfect deal for the movie, and I passed on it because we didn't know what we wanted. And we were told, no, you want this. And I'm like, yeah, we want that. And then I'm like, 2 years later, I'm like, damn, we should have took that.
You take whatever
know
is
what I mean?
offered to you.
And that's where you have to be smart and begin to understand. But, you know, as an independent director, as an independent producer, you know, you have to take these lumps. You got to have that, you know, that metaphorical death. you have to really understand what it feels like to pour out a bucket of change to go get gas and still have an idea that you want to make you're still trying to make a movie. You have to have those moments where you get laughed out of the room, where someone says that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And you have to be willing to go through all of that in order to get to a position where you bring your dream to life.
Right.
And that's not just film. That's, I think we had one leg up because I had experienced that personally with basketball. Being told no, trying out for this thing, coming out of college, getting cut. You know what I mean? Damn, I almost made that team. Oh, man, the Nuggets, oh, okay, no, they didn't want you. All right, cool. You know what I mean? Like, so a lot of that thick skin, you know what I mean? That war-ready mentality, we kind of fell into film already like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? When we like, damn, okay. I know for me personally, it was a whole bunch like, okay, we got setback. All right, cool, give me 30 minutes. All right, let's go. All right, how about this? You know what I mean? Because you have to almost be a little bit crazy.
Right.
You know what I mean? To keep seeing something where someone's like, no, you're not gonna get to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important for independent filmmakers than the X's and O's or learning a camera, learning how to deal with actors. I think that perseverance muscle, that muscle of not quitting, that muscle of like, damn, okay, you've been pushed down 21 times now. Can you get up on the 22nd time? And because that's when the door cracks open.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why we make it our business now. Everywhere we go, we stop and talk to everybody we can that is trying to make a movie. Because we learned a long time ago that the most important and most priceless thing that you could give to an upcoming filmmaker is information. Because we never got any of that. It's not $5. It's not, can you give me $100,000? Although they might feel like that is, oh yeah, you give me some money, I can make this. It's information. What are you shooting? Why are you shooting it? Are you shooting with the purpose? If you're making a short and you're an independent filmmaker and you have no money and you're spending your $15,000 on that short, is that short also a backdoor pilot for a TV show? Is it a backdoor pilot for a film where you can now go into the studio and say, what is the purpose behind that? Not just, I shot my homies and my grandma, we all made this. Why?
Yeah.
What is it for? Where is it going?
Knowing that
You
first.
know what I mean? Are you trying to go to Sundance? Are you trying to go to Toronto? Are you trying to take the short and get a meeting at Netflix and set it up as that information right there, man, is like priceless. So I go around texting people saying, hey, man, you got to do it this way.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to be sitting on the sideline after you make that going like, damn, man, yeah, I should have, no. What you going to do, man?
So let me ask you, at what point in Popcorn Talk history did you hear and feel that you were so confident that this was going to become a reality, that this was going to become your career? Like, what point did you know that all the X's were checked?
I still don't know today.
Yeah, you don't ever
You don't?
know. There is no, not to answer his question, but there is no guarantee in this business with anything that you do. Just because you are successful with one film doesn't mean you're going to be successful with the other.
Yeah,
either,
I would also add to that. The one thing that I feel like I am confident of, and I think that keeps me and Roxanne and Hidden Empire working constantly, is the fear of being told no or being fired. I don't know. That's one of my greatest fears. My dad worked for a steel mill for 35 years, Inland Steel in Gary, Indiana, and his best friend Nichols worked there for 38 years, only to be told one day that the steel mill is shutting down and your pension and all your shit that you were supposed to get, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I think for me, watching my mom work, watching her dad work, watching our families like be dropped into these worlds where they're basically banking on someone to give you something, right? Goods for effort. I decided as a filmmaker, me personally, and sometimes it rattles the cage with Roxanne, and now, she has to conform to how I'm moving because I'm a director and I'm like, we got to do it this way, and is to not stop working.
Right.
Is to basically outwork everybody around you. That we can't control. I might not be able to be the best filmmaker. I might not be able to appease the critics. I might not be able to make the biggest movies. She might not be able to produce, Django or the next Quentin movie or whatever. But what we can do is outwork all the asses. Mm-hmm. So we approach it like that. Like,
constantly creating.
We're gonna go and we're gonna work and we're not gonna sit back and go, I wonder what the next movie we could we like, yo, that's dope. I love that. Go.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. Go. Mm-hmm. I love that. Move. I love that. Shoot it. Right? Because we're like, we can work our asses to where we are creating a trail where we're making movies for people that sit in the theater, and you can make an Intruder that says something. Mm-hmm. You can make a Traffic. You can make a Black and Blue. What's next?
Right.
What's next? What's next? Why we are not afforded the ability to make a film and wait for 2 years and go, I think my next movie will be this. We not getting paid that type of money. We've never been in that world. You gave me $20 million for a film or $10 million. Maybe I go, yes, I'll wait a year and wait and see what I think. Yeah. But at that point, man, I believe that style of filmmaker is not, it can't happen anymore. Martin Scorsese, James Cameron, these are guys that are incredible, the best filmmakers you could think of, right? But that day and age of I make a movie today and not make one for 3 years or 5 years, and then they can afford that, we cannot, right? We gotta, pay for rent. You gotta pay for your shit. I'm like, man, I don't even know how you could do that. Right. So at this point, it's like, can you drive and find success? And it's funny, man, because I feel like Tyler Perry has that same model.
Oh, 100%.
He's not necessarily the artist like that, where he's like, I'm making movies that, hopefully win Oscars, but he's making great content that people love, that fans come to the theater to see. He's a genius at doing it, and guess what? He's turning over. Go.
Constantly.
You know what I mean? He's going.
Constantly.
And that's what the film is about.
I was there. I was at Lionsgate when they brought him in for the first time.
Yes.
Diary of a Mad Black Man was the first movie.
Yes.
And one of my responsibilities was I had to go around this country and do presentations and talk about the slate and talk about Tyler Perry. Now, it was incredible because even at the time we didn't know, but we set up our first hotline to buy advance tickets, and the very first day they went on sale, it crashed the hotline.
Wow.
So, and then he would produce, and then he was opening up his studios in Atlanta, and he was doing TV, and I would always get up in front of marketing execs, theater managers, exhibitor CEOs and such, and talk about how Tyler Perry was like the busiest man in showbiz because while he was making a movie, he would be doing his one-man play. While he was doing this, he always kept busy. So
we get it, man.
But I want to move over to, we should talk a little bit about Black and Blue.
A little bit about Black and Blue.
I want to talk about Black and Blue. Yeah, and no, well, this is what I talked about at the beginning.
No, but it's fascinating to hear your story because I don't. We talked about junkets before. You get 4 minutes. We never get to talk about this stuff.
It's what you're supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
When we were sitting down, I was like, I like to pick a thread. It's fascinating. But Black and Blue, I think there's a lot of threads that we can talk about. Naomi Harris is fantastic. But I want to talk about the location. To me, the location of the movie was extraordinarily important because you could have set it in L.A. or even New York, but had you done that, at least to me, and I could be completely wrong, you would have made it an L.A. story. By setting it in New Orleans, you make it more of a universal story. That it happens everywhere. Because everybody already hears about how New York and L.A., about this police bigotry, corruption is going on. But when you set it outside of a city like that, it makes it broader. And it's reflective of society as a whole, as opposed to just making it city-centric. So I thought that was a genius move. Was that part of the process for you? Outside of tax incentives, was that like a conscious decision to make it outside of one of those two Mecca cities, and we want to do it here?
Yeah, because what happens is when we get ready to film Black and Blue, there are obviously every studio wants to lean on a tax incentive city.
Oh, yes.
That's the go-to, right? Unfortunately for me, I didn't really care about taxes or any of that based on the fact that this one might be my first studio movie, and I wanted to make a really, really good movie. So it was. We had Boston, we had Atlanta, we had all. I mean, it was actually dealer's choice. I thought New Orleans was incredible. When I had always thought the city was great. I started doing a little bit more research on what was going on there, and New Orleans had a really, really good through line to me, to where I come from, which is Gary, Indiana. Very blue collar, family-oriented place, had been destroyed, ravaged by, obviously Katrina and other things that they went through there, but at the same time had a high level of corruption. So when you start getting into cities like Baltimore, Gary, Indiana, Chicago, New Orleans, Oakland, when you start getting to the hubs of these places, like there's another world that's going on below the surface with police officers and people. And New Orleans really captivated me based on the fact that I found out when I got to New Orleans, I really got with some of the detectives and some of the police officers there, some that were retired, that said, hey man, this is the perfect place to be. And I said, why, what's going on? He said, because right after Katrina, there was no law. You got to remember. So when that storm came through there were prisons that were overturned. People went on the run. There were no more computer. There was no way to identify people that were locked up at the time, that were in transit, that were coming from different communities, that were it would just became all out anarchy. And police officers that came back in there when they was trying to get it back together, now you got people that's coming back there that's settling back in, people that didn't left. So I was told, like, man, it was like the Wild Wild West, right? People dealing dope, drug dealers, cops are getting involved. Cops are robbing dope dealers. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, and I said, man, this is crazy. So that movie, that hub, to me was like, wow, this is really, really good for what the film is about. But then secondly, what I loved about New Orleans was the landscape. And I think that's one of the biggest things that me and Dante really fell in love with the movie. When we first got to New Orleans, obviously being with Dante, nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, but at the same time, the line with Heat, The Insider, Last of the Mohicans, like he had a vision when he looked, and we said, well, how do we want this to look? And we immediately had this idea for blue. Like we wanted it to have a blue electric feel, which if you see the movie, it feels like that. We wanted grit. Right, we wanted the movie to actually have grain, which is something people don't do anymore. So black and blue represents grit and grain, right? The city represents that. But then the texture and the artwork, when we started traveling around, it was undeniable. Everywhere we went, there was some form of someone did some type of art on all the buildings, right? And that was post-Katrina. That is people coming back either drawing iconic legends, people that fought, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, whatever it might be, Harriet Tubman, all these images on all these buildings. I said, man, who's doing this? And they said, it's an artist named B. Mike. And oh, by the way, there's 50 other artists under him that do. I said, man, this is insane. Because all these wild walls were destroyed. The artists have now come, same way they play music, now you have people that are incredible with paintbrushes, and they're coming and doing their art. You know what I mean? Almost like the Renaissance period, where you're like, damn, this is insane. And I looked at Dante and he said, we have to get this art. We have to shoot it. And if you watch the movie, every frame of this film, every frame is art. As a matter of fact, Mouse, the character Tyrese plays, he's an artist. We had to delete a few scenes, but Tyrese's character was basically a reformed guy, went to jail, had a felony, got out, but his whole makeup, his whole DNA was art. You know what I mean? So when you go in his house, right there is a giant picture of Malcolm X. When you first see it, to the left is Gandhi, to the right is Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, he has Count Basie. The whole thing is about art. And what an incredible movie, man. I will say this because we're doing the anatomy of film. So Sony Screen Gems was like, we can't afford to have Dante Spinozzi. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to do the movie without Dante. So they was like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'm not going to pick anybody else but Dante. So I went to Roxanne. Roxanne was like, we just got to pay Dante ourselves.
Wow.
So I was like, all right. So we ended up paying for Dante to come do this movie out of pocket, based on the fact that I did not want my first foyer into a studio movie to be with a TV cinematographer. When I had worked with the best of the best independently. So I said, well, how could I go from Daniel Pearl, Dante Spinotti to now going to a
First time.
studio movie and then like give me the guy that does that TV show? I'm like, no, man, like we can't do that. So that is where a lot of times our passion outweighs right the business, because now we're going like, no, I need him. I need that person. I need that camera operator. So I can do what I do on the highest level and make the best piece of work.
Did Dante know this? Like,
but obviously,
Did he know
obviously, and it's still not Dante's rate.
Right.
But you can't give Dante what they were going to give him. You know what I'm like? You can't give this dude. This is Michael Mann, cinematographer.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
So you can't say, oh yeah, we'll have him come on down for $3,000. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like,
but they obviously had to know, because we had to pay them separately outside of his studio check. We had to cut a check.
So he was taking food from your mouth. I can't believe it.
But we don't think of it that way. But you are right.
But look at the results. Look at the results.
It's the bigger picture.
A couple of things too. You'd mentioned Tyrese. I actually believe, and I've written this in my review, you really drew out an amazing, I think his most amazing performance. It's the first time that I saw him so dramatic, and I hope that other people, because he was very sympathetic.
Yeah.
And yes, we know he's the tough guy and wisecracking guy in Fast and Furious. It's great. But this side of him, I was like, he can actually act. So great job on getting and drawing that out of him. I hope it leads to more.
I actually wanted to ask you, I think this is a very important thing to talk to you guys about. This is the first film, if I'm not mistaken, to embrace the whole new generation of the world we live in, where now we have police body cams.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
So that, I mean, you beat everyone to the punch with this. And you used it to such extreme in this film, and I think such importance to kind of show. Why was that for you so important to tell this story and use that as a plot device?
Well, the movie represents the first, on many levels. It's the first time we've had an African American female lead play a police officer in cinematic history.
Yep.
It's the first movie that actually is actually using the body cam footage as a character in the film. And it was important to me for a lot of different reasons. A few months before we did Black and Blue, a young kid named Stephon Clark was killed in Sacramento, California. He was shot 28 times in the backyard of his grandmother's house. And before that, obviously, we have had too many murders to even have a conversation about on this show, which brought, which to me was a little bit weird in a sense to where, you have to begin to say, okay, who's human and who's not? What's really going on? What does the black and blue line represent? The reality is when these people are being killed, there's 5 or 6 officers standing right behind them with body cams. At some point, someone has to actually say, hey man, I actually knew that dude. I walked by this block every day. That wasn't, that wasn't right. And you could do that in private.
Yeah.
Right? And when you do that in private, all of a sudden now you don't see people constantly getting off on these charges when they're killing someone that has no gun. Or someone on a cell phone in a car with their hands on the steering wheel while their girlfriend is videotaping. Like, these are moments where you're like, yo, how could this possibly be? So going into the film, I don't really think, and I've said this publicly a few times, I don't really think Sony really understood what that movie represented to me. It was a run chase movie. Eric Paquette was a brilliant executive to put the movie together. But when he put it in the hands of someone that actually lives in the culture and breathes in the culture and really understand what's going on. I've been pulled out of a cop car. I mean, I've been pulled out of my car. I've been put on the hood of a car. I've been carjacked. I've had all of that happen. Roxanne has lived that. Roxanne has been experienced. So all of a sudden now you have to go, okay, this is what that feels like. This is what that looks like. This is what that energy is. And when you're behind the camera, when you're speaking to someone like Tyrese or Naomi for those types of characters, you got it. They're living it too.
Yes.
Right? So,
Yeah, I want to talk Naomi. Number one, the opening 5 minutes of the movie for me was extraordinarily powerful.
Yes.
Because it was almost, for me, I looked at it as a quick bait and switch.
That's right.
Because when the cops are coming up behind her, going in knowing that she's a cop, I just thought, hey, you want some coffee or whatever, not knowing the events that actually come down.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so this is setting up the movie.
Yeah.
The other scene, there were 2 other scenes. The scene when they go into the the Packy, the 7-Eleven type store, the convenience store, and the person behind the counter was like, "Oh, are you finally responding to my call that I put in 24 hours ago?" And it's like, "Oh, I know nothing about that. I'm just here for a bag of chips." And then when they were going by the project house, and his partner was like, "Yeah, we don't even take calls from there anymore unless it's Blue that's in trouble." And those 3 scenes to me set up thematically what the movie is about. And again, setting it, if you did it in LA, it becomes, that happens in LA. Taking it out of that situation to me makes it more broadening. Like you go, this doesn't just happen in LA.
It happens everywhere in the world.
Everywhere.
Well, I want to also say that I feel like the evolution of cinema, and especially of people of color of recent, is that I'm so happy that we finally have started moving away from slave movies. I feel like that was literally the only way.
Or have we?
You know what I mean, man? Like literally, like the evolution of cinema has always been
I'm getting ready to do.
But I'm like, these movies that actually say something about the community, okay? Like I was a big supporter of Hate You Give last year, which I absolutely loved, and this film also is great because it's saying something, and it's important. Queen and Slim, which I have not seen, but I'm seeing this week, is going to say something, and I think it's important to have these movies that represent the culture, but are being told on a bigger scale because more people are seeing it. Because let's be honest, you are talking to two white guys at this table. We don't always know what that's like. I only know what it's like because I actually grew up in a household where I actually have 4 black brothers. So I see what the difference is. I see how they're treated when they go into a certain neighborhood. And I see how police and just stores look at them. They follow them around the store. It's crazy. So I just want to say thank you for bringing awareness of these topics to light. Because I think they're so incredibly important.
They were great. And the way that you presented them in the movie, I thought was fantastic. Because it's the way storytelling should be. It's either by you set up a scene and then there's dialogue. Again, there was we don't take calls from there anymore unless it's Blue or you here for this? No, I'm just buying a bag of chips. I didn't even know about the call. Just a minute of dialogue tells you everything you need to know about a theme that's going to be relevant through the remainder of the movie.
And it's real and it's grounded in authenticity, and that's what happens when you get real filmmakers to do real films that they've actually experienced or lived in. So we don't take cars in there. That's every project around the country. Right? There is a protocol when police officers are getting ready to go into project housing, they do not ride in there by themselves. They have to now wait for 2, 3, 4 cars, get a call, understand that they're going into a hostile environment, right before. And it doesn't matter if someone's in there shot dying. We're waiting. We're waiting to drive in there. And when you understand that's how it is and the mechanics, then you start going like, damn, what is going on, man? How is it war zones in America where people are living and it's disgusting, man. And if you come from those environments, you really understand. I've lived in the projects. So you can't tell me nothing about a project. You know what I mean? You can't tell me nothing about a roach crawling through inside your TV screen while you're watching it. Experience that. You know what I mean? Or you can't tell us nothing about the culture because we live it every day. And the reality is, when I say culture, it's funny, man, I'm going to make sure you know this too. It doesn't just pertain to black people. Culture are people that have been socially impacted. Right? Like you could live. I've had white people live in the projects next to me. You know what I mean? Like it's how have you been impacted? What world are you coming from? Is there a liquor store in every corner of your neighborhood? Is there no jobs where you come from? You know what I mean? Like how many trailer homes is in that area? Like all of a sudden now it's like, no, that is the culture. The culture is people that are actually not being able to actually make ends meet, trying to figure it out, working 3 jobs, and that's still not enough. You know what I mean? The young kid that's going to school and not being able to learn anything because he didn't eat last night. You know what I mean? So those things and those worlds are, always a combination of things that make great cinema when you've actually lived it and you could actually say something.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap, even though we love talking.
Let's keep going.
Yes, we could have went for another hour or so.
I think easily.
But honestly, I do want to ask. if you had closing remarks, not only just about this film, but as filmmakers, as producers, as being your own students, your own teachers, what is one piece of advice you would give everyone out there?
Well, I have a closing remark and a piece of advice.
Okay.
And I'll let Roxanne do hers first, then I'll do mine last. Closing remark.
Okay, closing remark.
And advice.
And actually,
advice.
too, because we talked about this, and I want to give due diligence because I promised you that we would. You're multi-hyphenate, so you do the movie, but you're also working on a couple of podcasts that you're really ready to produce that are getting ready. So
we're trying.
That's great. You can talk a little bit about that, but I'm also itching to hear your closing remarks because this has been an education.
Yeah.
This is what, in a sense, Anatomy was all about. It was really about to learn about the collaborative
It's good.
process.
This is going to be great for people to listen to.
I hope, yeah. This should be on the Blu-ray. But this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having us. I mean, I think my closing remark is, I'm just very blessed to be doing what we're doing, and I want to just continue to try to educate and build the younger people around me to teach and show them how to get out of this and to go to the next level. That's why I'm doing all of this, is I'm going to bring everyone that I can with me on this journey that I can, and to never give up on your dreams no matter what's happening. Always try to pull from that negativity something positive, because
And today that's hard.
without that I wouldn't be where I'm at today. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out what your purpose is, instead of saying, oh man, this person did this to me, or this person did that, or why can't I do this, or why can't I do that. Really trying to find motivation or positivity in your situation to get to the next, and understand that you're just really going through this.
Right.
It's not forever, right? And baby steps, one step at a time, short-term goals to get to your long-term goals, right?
And if I could say, you two, when you talk about collaborative efforts, you two are fortunate. You have one another. I mean, I can see that you draw from one another.
Yeah.
Just at this time, just meeting you for the first time. And you're fortunate in that regards, because many people don't have the partner who supports one another.
That's right.
And I just saw that here just in the hour plus that we've talked. So
Thank you.
you're very fortunate in that regards, that you talk about the positive. You have each other to bring the other person up when they're down. So I can see that wonderful balance in you. You're very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just say my closing remark would be for Black and Blue. We are really pushing this film for awards now, so people could actually see it, understand what the film is about. The movie is about being the change. The movie is about having integrity. The movie's about, if you see something, say something. And you're right, man. It's the first time, it is not a movie where every critic in the world is like, oh my God, did you see? No, this is a movie that is relevant and has spoken to the entire culture. And if you don't understand that, all you got to do is go online and read what people are saying, right? People are piling in the theater and coming out and having conversation about this movie. And the conversation is, what do we need to do to actually blur the lines between Black and Blue, a line that's been there for hundreds of years, right? And I'm just happy that the film is actually creating that type of conversation. I definitely believe that Naomi Harris should get some Oscar nomination buzz around her. I think this is Tyrese's first incredible performance. People forgot about John Singleton tap Tyrese, and he's incredible. And I feel like when you could pull something off like this in this environment at this time, and it is directly in the zeitgeist of what's going on in the culture right now, today, this is happening. Not a year from now, we're like, oh yeah, remember last year they was, no, this is right now.
Right.
God forbid this weekend it doesn't happen again, right? And I feel like the awards, people, the voters, this is why you're on those boards. Because you need to seek films like this and give them credit. I feel like Naomi was very powerful and Tyrese was very powerful to put their careers into a film like this and allow people to actually see something that's relevant and real. And they should be rewarded for that. So that's my remark for Black and Blue. I think my last bit of advice to anyone would just be prepared to lose it all to gain everything you want. And if you're not willing to lose it all, then you're not in a position to win. This is a very tough business, no matter what color you are. It's a tough business to get into. It's a tough business to find success. But at the same time, if you're an artist, your job as an artist is to paint and push forth reflections of what time you lived in. And if you're not doing that, then you're doing it all wrong. You know what I mean? When you go back and think of the Sistine Chapel, when you go back and think of, the social revolution, all these moments in times, like there are artists right there painting canvas, art, writing, murals, movie screens of what is going on. And that's your job. You can be fun and funny, but at some point inside of that window, you need to be able to point to something, to say something to people. And that's what we're trying to do. And that would be my advice to you, is say something.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, please seek out Popcorn Talk Network as
You
well.
guys can use that, by the way, Popcorn Talk. Like when people just place it in there.
Just stop saying that.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Keep popping.
But yes, please seek out Black and Blue in theaters now. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Deon and
thank you
Roxanne,
so
for being
much.
here. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.